Some reunions bring back memories. Others reveal truths that no one expected to hear. When Christina Applegate sat down with Ed O'Neill years after they first became television's most famous father and daughter, fans expected laughter, old stories, and a little nostalgia. They got all of that. But they also heard something much deeper. Christina shared a heartfelt truth about Ed that changed the way many people looked at their decades-long friendship. It wasn't about ratings or fame. It was about the quiet kindness that happened when the cameras were no longer rolling. For millions of viewers, Christina Applegate and Ed O'Neill will always be Kelly Bundy and Al Bundy from Married, with Children. The hit sitcom entertained audiences for more than a decade and became one of the defining comedy shows of its time. Their constant arguments, funny misunderstandings, and unforgettable one-liners made them one of television's most recognizable families. But behind the jokes was a relationship that grew stronger with every passing year. In interviews over the years, both actors have spoken warmly about working together. Yet during their reunion, Christina offered a personal reflection that many fans had never heard before. She described Ed not just as a talented actor, but as someone who quietly looked after the people around him and made difficult days easier without asking for praise. That simple statement caught people's attention because Hollywood stories often focus on conflict, rivalry, or drama. This one was different. It reminded viewers that the strongest friendships are sometimes the ones that stay out of the headlines. If you've ever had someone in your life whose support mattered more than they probably realized, tell us about it in the comments. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness leave the biggest mark. But Christina's touching words didn't appear out of nowhere. They were built on years of shared experiences, career highs, personal challenges, and a friendship that began long before anyone imagined it would last for decades. To understand why her words carried so much weight, we have to go back to where it all started, before they became one of television's most unforgettable families. Long before they became one of television's most famous father and daughter duos, Christina Applegate and Ed O'Neill were walking very different paths. Ed O'Neill's journey to Hollywood was anything but easy. Before acting, he dreamed of becoming a professional football player. He even spent time with the Pittsburgh Steelers during training camp, hoping sports would become his future. But life had other plans. When that dream came to an end, he found himself searching for a new purpose. Acting was not an instant success. Ed worked ordinary jobs while studying theater, slowly building his confidence on stage. He appeared in commercials and small television roles, often wondering if he would ever get the big break he had been chasing. Years of rejection became part of his daily life, but he kept going. That quiet determination would later become one of the qualities his co-stars admired most. Meanwhile, Christina Applegate entered Hollywood from a completely different direction. Born into a family connected to the entertainment world, she appeared on television as a baby. By the time most children were learning multiplication tables, Christina was already auditioning regularly. Yet growing up in front of cameras came with its own pressure. Every role brought expectations, and every success was followed by the question of whether she could do it again. Then came 1987. The new sitcom Married, with Children introduced viewers to the wildly dysfunctional Bundy family. At first, many television executives doubted the show's unusual style. Its humor was bold, its characters were flawed, and it broke many of the rules that family sitcoms usually followed. Few people expected it to become a cultural phenomenon. Ed was cast as the grumpy shoe salesman Al Bundy, while Christina took on the role of his carefree daughter, Kelly Bundy. Their chemistry appeared almost immediately. Even though their characters argued constantly, there was an unmistakable warmth underneath the comedy that audiences connected with. But that chemistry wasn't created by accident. Cast members have recalled that Ed naturally became a calming presence on set. New actors often felt nervous, especially younger performers trying to find their place. Christina was still a teenager when the show began, learning how to handle long filming days, media attention, and the pressure of starring in a hit series. According to Christina in later interviews, Ed never treated her like she was just the kid. Instead, he treated her with respect. He shared advice when it was needed and gave her room to grow without making her feel judged. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simply the kind of steady support that builds trust over time. The success of Married, with Children changed both of their lives. What was expected to be a short-lived sitcom ran for 11 seasons and turned its cast into household names across America and beyond. Yet fame brought its own challenges. As the show's popularity exploded, every interview, every appearance, and every rumor became headline material. Many television casts struggle under that kind of pressure. Friendships fade. Egos grow. Misunderstandings become public stories. But something different was happening behind the scenes. While audiences only saw the jokes on screen, a genuine family atmosphere was slowly taking shape off camera. Years later, Christina would look back on that time with gratitude, saying that Ed's quiet kindness helped shape not only her career but also the person she became. What seemed like an ordinary sitcom was becoming the foundation of a lifelong friendship. And the biggest proof of that bond wouldn't appear until decades later, when one emotional reunion reminded everyone that some television families never truly stop being family. If you're enjoying stories like this, subscribe now because the biggest twist is still ahead. By the early 1990s, Married, with Children had become one of the biggest comedy shows on television. Week after week, millions of viewers tuned in to watch the Bundy family stumble through another hilarious disaster. To fans, the cast looked perfectly comfortable together. What many people did not realize was that the connection they saw on screen had become very real behind the scenes. After spending nearly 11 years working side by side, the cast had grown up together in many ways. Christina Applegate entered the series as a teenager. By the time the show ended in 1997, she had become an adult. Much of that transformation happened while Ed O'Neill was working just a few feet away. Years later, Christina spoke about those days with deep appreciation. In interviews and reunion conversations, she explained that Ed was never interested in being the loudest person in the room. Instead, he led by example. He showed up prepared, treated everyone with respect, and remained remarkably steady even when television production became stressful. That calm attitude made a lasting impression. Hollywood is often described as unpredictable. Long hours, constant pressure, and public attention can easily create tension on a set. Yet many people who worked on Married, with Children have described the atmosphere as surprisingly supportive. Cast members joked together between scenes, celebrated birthdays, and spent years building trust that could not be faked for the camera. But Ed's influence reached beyond professionalism. Christina has recalled that there were moments when she felt uncertain about herself, as many young actors do. Fame came quickly, and with it came criticism from magazines, television commentators, and the public. Growing up under that spotlight was not always easy. According to Christina, Ed had a way of helping without making it feel like a lesson. Sometimes it was a quiet conversation. Sometimes it was simple encouragement. Sometimes it was nothing more than making sure she knew someone believed in her. Those moments rarely made entertainment headlines because they were never meant to. They happened away from interviews and red carpets. Yet years later, those were the memories Christina chose to talk about. That says a lot. Another reason their friendship stood out was because neither actor tried to create publicity around it. They pursued separate careers after the sitcom ended. Christina earned critical praise for projects like Samantha Who? And later Dead to Me. Ed found enormous success playing Jay Pritchett on Modern Family, introducing himself to an entirely new generation of viewers. Despite taking different paths, their respect for one another never disappeared. Whenever reporters asked about their time together, both spoke with warmth rather than nostalgia alone. They remembered hard work, shared laughter, and the unusual experience of spending more than a decade pretending to be family until, in many ways, they actually felt like one. Then life became much harder for Christina. She faced serious health challenges that required incredible strength and resilience. After publicly sharing her diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, she received an outpouring of support from fans, friends, and colleagues throughout the entertainment industry. Among those who continued to stand beside her was Ed O'Neill. Although neither of them turned their private friendship into public drama, every reunion showed genuine affection. Their smiles, hugs, and conversations looked effortless because they came from decades of shared history. Then came the reunion that captured everyone's attention. Fans expected funny stories about the old sitcom. Instead, they witnessed something much more powerful. Christina revealed a deeply personal truth about Ed O'Neill that reminded people why some friendships survive long after the final episode airs. And what she said left many viewers unexpectedly emotional. When Christina Applegate and Ed O'Neill reunited in public years after Married, with Children ended, many fans expected a trip down memory lane. Clips from the sitcom were shared online again. Old interviews resurfaced. Social media filled with favorite Bundy family moments. It felt like a celebration of a television classic. But the reunion became memorable for a different reason. As they reflected on their years together, Christina spoke about Ed in a way that reached far beyond comedy. She described him as someone who had always made her feel safe. It was not a dramatic revelation or a shocking secret. It was something quieter, and perhaps more meaningful. She explained that when she was still very young and learning how to navigate the entertainment industry, Ed was a steady presence. He was never trying to be the center of attention behind the scenes. Instead, he looked out for the people around him. That support, Christina suggested, meant more to her than many viewers ever realized. The comment quickly spread across entertainment news and fan communities. People were touched because it felt genuine. In an industry where stories often revolve around feuds, betrayals, or broken friendships, this was the opposite. It was the story of a bond that had lasted for decades without needing headlines to keep it alive. But that wasn't the only reason fans reacted so strongly. Christina has been remarkably open about the personal challenges she has faced in recent years. After announcing her diagnosis with multiple sclerosis in 2021, she spoke honestly about how the disease had changed her daily life. She also shared the emotional impact it had on her career, eventually saying that Dead to Me would likely be her final on-screen acting role because of the physical demands of the condition. Throughout that difficult period, she often expressed gratitude for the people who stood beside her. While Ed O'Neill has always been private about personal matters, every public interaction between the two reflected the same warmth audiences remembered from decades earlier. Their hugs looked real. Their smiles were effortless. There was no sense that they were performing for cameras. They simply seemed happy to see each other. If you're enjoying stories that reveal the people behind the fame, subscribe now because the most emotional part of this story is still ahead. What made Christina's words even more powerful was that they matched what many of Ed's colleagues have said over the years. Cast members from both Married, with Children and Modern Family have often described him as patient, professional, and generous with younger actors. While every workplace has different experiences, a consistent picture has emerged through interviews. Ed earned respect not by demanding it, but by the way he treated others. That consistency gave Christina's tribute even greater weight. She wasn't revealing a side of Ed that nobody knew. She was confirming what many people who had worked with him had quietly believed for years. Have you ever had someone whose quiet support changed your life without asking for anything in return? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the people who speak the least leave the biggest impact. As the reunion came to an end, fans realized they had witnessed something rare. Not just two actors remembering an old television show, but two lifelong friends reminding the world that kindness can outlast fame. And that lesson would become the most important part of their shared legacy. When Married, with Children ended in 1997, few realized its greatest legacy wouldn't be the laughs. It would be the friendships that lasted long after the cameras stopped rolling. In Hollywood, friendships often fade as careers move on. But Christina Applegate and Ed O'Neill remained close through decades of success, challenges, and life changes. While Christina built a career beyond Kelly Bundy and Ed became a beloved star on Modern Family, neither forgot the bond they formed on set. That bond became even more meaningful when Christina publicly shared her battle with multiple sclerosis. Through difficult times, she often spoke about the importance of people who stood by her. Her reunion with Ed reminded fans why their friendship was so special. The surprising truth Christina revealed wasn't a scandal or secret. It was that Ed had always been the same caring, supportive person behind the scenes that fans hoped he was. A mentor. A friend. Someone who quietly helped others without seeking attention. That's why their story continues to resonate. It reminds us that real success isn't just about fame or awards, it's about the impact we have on the people around us. As fans revisit their classic sitcom moments, they now see something even more meaningful behind the laughter. A friendship built on loyalty, kindness, and respect. And in a world obsessed with headlines, that may be the most inspiring story of all.